For the next 5 nights, I'm going to be based in Croatia's historical town of Trogir, a mere 30-minute drive from the city of Split. Trogir is a great base, in an area of Croatia that houses an array of gorgeous towns and cities, stunning national parks, and is the gateway to numerous islands. Over the next few days, I'll be journeying throughout the region and taking in some of the area's most beautiful sights. But it's not all plain sailing. Join me on my adventure around this iconic Croatian region. It's my first morning in Trogir. After a quick breakfast at my apartment, it's time to walk into Trogir's Old Town. The Old Town lies on a small island connected to the mainland and the island of Chiovo by bridges. Trogir was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1997 and is home to numerous historical monuments, including the Cathedral of St. Lawrence, which was built in the 13th century. Trogir is the best preserved Romanesque Gothic complex in all of Central Europe. Trogir is made up of narrow cobbled streets which house an abundance of curio shops, cafés and restaurants. As well as housing 10 churches, Trogir is also home to a magnificent fortress called the Kamerlengo fortress, which was built in 1420 by the Venetians. It was once connected to Trogir's city walls. The fortress is perched on the edge of the Old Town, facing the island of Chiovo. We decided to enter the fortress. Inside was an opportunity to try out some archery. I'd never done it before, but was keen to give it a go.
Oh, well done. You got it on the board.
Did you get that?
Well, no, I didn't get that. Wow, is that right in the middle?
That was really close. That was good.
Wow. You said you've not done this before.
I've not done it before.
I'm a bit worried about my game now. Wow. That was in the red, I think.
Yeah, hidden talent. Okay.
Then it was Lewis's turn. Ooh.
Decent, not as good as you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Archery complete, we ascended the stairs to the first floor of the fortress. Scared?
Yeah.
I thought you would be. From there we entered the tower, going up now, where we met a steep staircase that would take us to the very top. You ready? It goes up again. Oh. Look at this.
Yeah.
The views from the top of the tower were spectacular. We could see Trogir Old Town and all its monuments, as well as the neighbouring island of Chiovo. The fortress was rapidly turning into the highlight of my explorations around Trogir Old Town. As the sun started to set, we wandered around the Old Town once more, before stopping at one of the restaurants for some dinner.
We're in the Old Town of Trogir, and we've come to Cut Steakhouse, and I've got a pint of the local lager, and we're going to have some beef tartare. Oh, hello. Okay, I forgot to film the starter because it went so fast. It was steak tartare, and for main we have grilled lamb and a salad.
Our day in Trogir Old Town was coming to an end. The Old Town is undeniably a beautiful place. However, I think it's only fair I give my honest opinion. I wasn't overly impressed with the restaurants. Nothing had spectacular reviews, and when I ate at some of them, I could kind of see why. Compared to my previous meals in the country, the food was just okay. The Old Town itself also wasn't quite as impressive as Dubrovnik. I felt a little claustrophobic in the narrow streets, especially considering how popular with tourists the town is. That's not to say I didn't like Trogir. The fortress was wonderful, and I especially loved the archery and views at the top. I also loved Trogir as a base. Just outside of the Old Town is an array of shops and also a bustling green market, which had absolutely everything I needed for supplies back in the apartment. The good news was I still had 4 nights here. I'd organised an exciting itinerary for the next few days, and I was especially excited for the adventure we'd be taking tomorrow. Good morning. So today's itinerary I'm really looking forward to. We're going to drive to Krka National Park, which is a beautiful waterfall national park. Krka National Park is an hour's drive from Trogir. There are numerous entrances to the park, which encompasses an area of 109 square kilometres. Our entrance of choice was within Skradin town, a small town on the banks of the Krka River, just west of the national park. Our journey took us inland, journeying into Croatia's mountainous interior. At one point, we were greeted with stunning views of Trogir town and the neighbouring island of Trogir. Away from the coast, we found ourselves driving through swathes of forest, keeping a lookout for those elusive wild boars that road signs kept reminding us of. We made a point of avoiding the main toll roads, determined to see a snippet of rural Croatia. Eventually, we found ourselves driving into Skradin, the small town peeking out from its breathtaking location, surrounded by untouched forests and the bluest river I had ever seen. We parked up and then wandered into Skradin town, where we had a bite to eat before purchasing our entrance tickets for the national park. There was barely any time to waste before our ride docked up and we found ourselves queuing to get on. Tickets. I could barely contain my excitement. I couldn't believe we were taking the ferry into the national park. The boat wasn't too busy, and we found ourselves with a group of seats all to ourselves, which had idyllic views of the beautiful surroundings. Before long, we were on our way, chugging up the Krka River and marvelling at how incredibly clear the water was. The ferry ride to the heart of the park, where most waterfalls are found, was estimated to take roughly 30 minutes. The national park officially starts on the other side of Skradin Bridge. The park surrounds the majestic river. In fact, around 2/3 of the Krka River is within the national park. The Krka River is home to 18 species of fish, 10 of which are endemic, and the reeds and swamped meadows at the side of the river house an abundance of amphibians and birds. Journeying up the river like this was incredibly peaceful, and I couldn't get over how gorgeous the surroundings were. I hadn't even seen the park's main attractions, and I was already in love with it. Eventually, we docked up at the Skradin Buk ferry pier. The Skradin Buk ferry pier is only a short walk away from the majestic Skradin Buk waterfalls, one of the main sights of the national park. Skradin Buk is actually a collection of 17 waterfalls, the biggest and most spectacular being the one at the bottom of the cascades, which is also the first waterfall that you see when you enter the park. We walked along the bridge, which cuts across the large lake at the bottom of the falls, providing stunning views of the falls on one side and the park's hydroelectric power plant on the other. This was in fact the first hydroelectric power plant built in Europe. Tourists used to be able to swim at the base of the falls. However, rules changed in 2020, banning the activity. This was to allow the ecosystem a chance to thrive, which I was fully on board with. We don't often think of the implications of entering pristine habitats like this. The truth is that our feet can damage the bottom of the lake, and our sun cream and insect repellent can poison the waters. There are several hiking trails you can take through the park. I opted to complete the Skradin Buk trail, a loop which encircles all 17 waterfalls. The trail is 1.2 miles long, and part of that involves ascending steep steps. The elevation difference from the lowest falls to the highest falls is roughly 46 meters. At the top of the falls is a restored ethnic village which houses mills which were built in the 17th and 18th centuries. What have you got there? An ice cream!
Yeah.
I was ecstatic that there was even a resident cat in the village. Oh my god, it can be in my photo. Oh my god. Wooden bridges mark out the trail from then on, which runs over water. Wow. I enjoyed the tranquility of the trail, listening to the never-ending cascade of water and the singing of insects. My favourite part of the trail, however, was glancing into the water at the fish. The water was so clear that I could clearly see each detail of them. Watching the gentle fish, I was reminded why swimming was no longer allowed here. This was their home, and they deserved to rest in the shallows in peace. We continued our walk through the quiet forests, finding it hard to believe that we seemed to have this part of the normally busy park to ourselves. In the early afternoon in August, Krka National Park is normally heaving. However, in the midst of a pandemic, the number of visitors appeared to have reduced dramatically. Before long, the trail came to an end, and we found ourselves boarding the ferry ride back to Skradin. After seeing ferries packed with people leaving the national park earlier, I was surprised to find that we almost had the boat entirely to ourselves. We took our pick of countless empty seats and sat back peacefully, watching the untouched park float past us. Unwinding on the ferry, after our day exploring Krka, I was able to reflect on my experience there. I had loved Krka National Park. It had in fact exceeded my expectations. The scenery is simply stunning, and I loved how access to the park involved this relaxing ferry ride. Before long, we were back in Skradin town, preparing for the next part of the day. Evening was approaching, but there was still one more thing on our agenda. Our destination was a small village on the coast called Poljica. Although the drive from Skradin was lengthy, this village was in fact not too far away from our base in Trogir. So we had a lovely day at Krka National Park. On our way back, we decided to stop off at a restaurant, which is at a little coastal village on the way back to our apartment. It's about an hour away from the national park, and I'm really excited. It's called like the Sky restaurant, which is part of a park hotel. This is some cheese and truffles as an appetizer. For starter, we have some carpaccio. I'm looking forward to it. The main course has arrived. We have got a beef steak, really rare, with truffle sauce and some potatoes. And now cheesecake has arrived. The food at the Sky Beach restaurant was absolutely amazing. Without a doubt, it was the best food I'd had in the whole of Croatia so far. And that's saying something, as I'd had so many great meals here. But there was still time for another restaurant to win the title, as tomorrow I had another very exciting adventure planned. Today we had an early start, so early that it meant there wasn't any time to have breakfast before we were on the road. I always bring shakes with me on my travels for moments like this where I have to quickly eat whilst out and about. I'm really particular about shakes as I hate consuming processed foods with lots of additives. NutriBuddy shakes are absolutely ideal as they're 100% natural and free from additives. I simply add some water or oat milk to some powder and then I have breakfast while I'm out, which was just as well as we were already running late as it was to catch the ferry from Split. The drive from our base in Trogir to Split's ferry terminal took 40 minutes. Traffic was not as bad as I'd been expecting, and finding somewhere to park in the busy city also wasn't too bad. Before long, we were at the ferry terminal, queuing to purchase tickets. We didn't really have an itinerary for today, and so we selected an island to visit for the day based on which ferries were available. In the end, purchasing a one-way ticket to the island of Hvar. 2 ferry companies had routes to Hvar, meaning ferries were pretty regular, available roughly every half an hour.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. Yeah, good morning from Split. We are currently at the ferry port. We've just bought tickets for the 11:30 ferry to Hvar, which leaves in about half an hour. And behind me you can see Split City. Yeah, I'm just really excited. Look how massive this queue is. Woo. As I queued for the ferry, my only regret was not having enough time this morning to explore Split. The city looked beautiful and I'd heard good things about it. Soon we were on the busy ferry, starting our hour-long voyage to Hvar. Evening. Going to the islands.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
We've actually managed to pull it off.
The journey took us out of Split's harbour, and then in between the Croatian islands of Salta and Brac. Hvar is situated just behind Brac. I sat back and watched the rolling ocean slide by, thoroughly enjoying the journey and admiring the stunning scenery. Before long, we were preparing for our arrival in Hvar. Hvar is an incredibly popular Croatian island, famed for its vibrant nightlife and upmarket restaurants, but there's a lot more to the island than nightclubs, as I was about to find out. We disembarked from the ferry and wandered around Hvar town. The traffic-free stone streets of the town are surrounded by 13th century city walls. Atop the town is a medieval fortress, and within it are numerous Gothic churches. At one end of Hvar's main square is the Cathedral of St. Stephen, which was built in the 14th century. Hvar town is made up of winding marble streets where you can find hidden cafés, restaurants and boutique stores. It was down one of these quaint streets that we found somewhere to dine for lunch.
We've arrived at a restaurant for lunch called Dalmatiano Steak and Fish. It was the high rated one in the area and I'm excited to try it. So we have a little appetizer arrived. This here is a carrot, which comes from a fruit which grows on the island. And this is a drink made from the carrot. So we're going to eat these and then we have our shot. So I've got a red homemade beer here, it's very nice. And our appetizer is some homemade garlic bread, olive oil and parsley. Steak tartare has arrived and it's got some egg, cheese and truffles on it. The main course has arrived. We have gnocchi with beef in a wine sauce, which is a traditional meal. It's meant to be quite a sweet sauce.
The dessert we ordered was called Grandma's Cake and it was delicious.
Here we have a local dessert wine to finish with.
After our meal, we wandered down the town's promenade, away from the main town, in the hopes of finding a quiet beach where we could relax and swim. We found a quiet spot, not too far from the town. The only problem was the water looked pretty choppy.
Okay, I'm going to try to go for a swim. It looks quite windy.
I made the decision to brave the waves.
It's cold.
It was a struggle to even get in the cold water.
It's cold, right?
Once in the water, I found myself faced with sea urchins, which did intimidate me slightly, considering how rough the water was.
Okay, I'm going to paddle I just walked over the walkway with the sea urchin and the sea urchin was putting me off. It was pretty coffee and that's why I didn't want to be worried I was going to knock into it. I have to try and swim now. I'm in the water.
You can probably tell by my voice that I was quite nervous for my swim. I'm a confident swimmer, but had never swum in waters quite as choppy as this before. Still, I like to challenge myself and decided to swim all the way to the line of buoys and back. It was a very stupid decision, as I soon found out. It was a struggle to keep my head above the waves. Water splashed into my eyes, blurring my vision. Seawater entered my mouth. I coughed and accidentally swallowed mouthfuls of it. The journey back was the hardest part. I could feel my energy slipping away as I fought against the vicious current. I wanted to rest so badly, but I couldn't. I had to keep swimming. I couldn't speak and was trembling with fatigue by the time I got to shore. But there was no time for me to catch my breath, as we had to walk back to Hvar in time for our ferry back to Split. When we reached the ferry terminal, we were surprised to see how rough the ocean had become. It was certainly not like this earlier, when we first arrived on the island. I couldn't believe I'd swum in such terrible conditions. I was suddenly nervous about the ferry ride to Split. I get seasick pretty easily, and judging by how much the ferries rocked on the dock, it seemed we'd be in for a bumpy ride. Our ferry arrived, and I watched nervously as people departed, all looking a bit worse for wear. Unfortunately, all outdoor seating on the ferry was closed due to safety concerns, which meant I would really be at the mercy to seasickness being indoors. The windows were so thick with salt, I could barely see out of them, and I felt even more concerned when a staff member started handing out sick bags to passengers. The tempestuous journey began. It was not going to be a fun hour and a half.
Dear passengers, we inform you that wearing protective face masks when traveling with the aerolíneas ships is mandatory. We kindly ask you to protect yours and ourselves and to adhere to all protective measures against the spread of coronavirus. We wish you a pleasant and safe trip.
At first, as our ferry hit the waves head-on, I thought I would be fine. The up and down motions from the front to the back of the vessel were almost fun.
I did too.
But then we changed direction, being hit side on by the waves. That changed everything. The boat was rocking profusely, and before long, I regretted the decision to turn down a sick bag. It was one of the worst hour and a halves of travel that I've endured so far. I felt awful, and it seemed like I wasn't the only one. Yet somehow I made it to Split without throwing up. I could have kissed the ground when I touched dry land. I felt pity for those customers, queuing for a ride back to Hvar. They had no idea what they were in for. As the sun set over Split, it marked the end to my time in Croatia. It had been an amazing week. Croatia had far exceeded my expectations in every way possible. My highlights of the trip were exploring Krka National Park and also Dubrovnik Old Town. If you are interested in seeing Dubrovnik and all the best things to do there, you won't want to miss this video here.